I'm very proud of us, Quinn.
Why is that?
We've been talking a lot recently on our bonus show, Spew Punk, beloved by all. Everyone agrees, very good show.
Award-winning.
Award-winning, yeah.
Yes.
It won the Professor Peanuts Excellence Award and the Bjork Can I Have a Minnow Award. We spent the last couple of episodes talking about Nosferatu and Sebastian Stan and his work in Better Man and The Apprentice, and we never once combined those into, I think, the very obvious joke.
Sebastian Stan, The Apprentice, and A Different Man. Where is the joke here?
Nosferatu and Sebastian Stan.
Nosferatu and Sebastian Stan. Because he's like a Winter Soldier, kind of?
Nosferatu and the thing it is an adaptation of, Dracula, are, I think, inarguably the most iconic depiction of Romania in literature and in art. And Sebastian Stan is the most famous Romanian man on planet Earth.
Oh. Yeah, I didn't know that. I'm glad that. Do you assume that I know every actor's nationality?
I don't know. You're a big MCU head. He was born in East Romania. Transylvania is central Romania, so not the same region of the country. But there's a Winter Soldier Dracula joke in there. Is what I'm saying.
Fair. I don't see, I don't see race. I don't see nationality. I don't research that independently. When it comes up, I consider that information learned. But generally, I'm not like, I like Emma Watson. Is she really from England?
Okay, so yeah, I'm just saying we never did any like, blah, I'm a better man. Stop owning me, Adam Pearson. Blah.
Okay, to be, again, very clear, there was no we in this. I never would have been able to make these jokes because I would not have made the connection to Sebastian Stan and Romania. I'm proud of you, though, I guess, for not making those jokes.
I realized it yesterday, and I was like, fuck, I left so much on the table there. But apparently I'm alone at this table. It's the kids' table. I'm wearing a dunce cap. This dry macaroni and cheese at this table.
Yeah, the ceiling above your table's dripping water.
This is just for us. You should listen to our bonus show, Spew Punk. It's very fun, but this is Crew Gunk, the interview show. We're doing it a little unusual style because of scheduling stuff. So this is going to go up, I think, the day after part 1 of season 12. So you will just have met Quinn's character. We're not going to do any spoilies. This is going to be completely normal to listen to in the release order. But I think it's fun to get a little insight into your process here. So Quinn, let's start off. My first question, sponsored by the beautiful, voluptuous, erotic patrons at patreon.com/Austin Yorsky.
Oh, wow. I thought that was someone's name. I didn't realize you were...
No, they're an incredibly sexual lot. Faith and Valor, a burnt grill plate from a Korean BBQ, Eardrum Espresso, Simon Lee, Conduit of Chungus, Bearer of Dinkus, Minion of John Con, and Mr. Pear. Thank you for making the show possible. It will disappear without you. So your characters, DiCaprio, Devereaux, Diamond Dragon. Just give you gave a little bit of a pitch in that first episode, but tell me again.
Sure. I usually try to find characters in fiction that I enjoy to be like a building point off of. Obviously, I did that a little bit with Shadow and the Hedgehog last season. But this season, I was going off the idea that I was like, I find characters like Emma Frost to be very fascinating. Like how they can just kind of throw out sort of...
Real Quinn heads know you're reading through the entirety of X-Men, so even I know now what Emma Frost is.
Yes. This is a character who, like, she is part of the X-Men despite being an antagonist during, like, their first sort of decade of existence. And then once she becomes a heroic character, very few of her flaws changed. So she's still narcissistic. She's still kind of pretentious and annoying. She's still kind of a bitch. She's still a little bit evil, kind of. But like she takes care of kids and stuff like that. So it all works out. And I was like, this is like a fun dynamic to throw into what is going to be like a very close-knit group of characters. Like I wanted a character to very pronounced have flaws that you could identify immediately. So it was just a case of like, all right, well, let's build off of this and let's see how this goes. And a diamond dragon was just a cool visual in my mind. I say this, by the way, I had no idea crystal dragons were a thing in Dungeons and Dragons. I just thought that was something Austin wouldn't have an issue with. I was like, yeah, I'm a dragon made of diamonds. Like I had like a list of like weird ass dragons I was going to try to be. Like I was like, oh, I might try to find like an insect dragon on a Yu-Gi-Oh card. I'll be like a dragon that collects insects or something like that. I had a whole bunch of stuff planned, and then you were eventually like, no, the thing you're actually trying to be is a real thing, and that's what we're going for.
Yeah, gem dragons are one of the three big categories besides chromatic and metallic. So, I mean, it's been fun getting into some of that dragon lore. We talked about this in part 0, but there's, 50 years of stuff to draw from. You can actually get pretty deep, which is something we haven't done a lot in this show's history, because usually everyone is from a different culture, and so we never are afforded the opportunity to get really granular with it. So I'm excited about that. Also, I did not know about the Emma Frost thing. You and I talk about X-Men with some regularity, but if that came up, I did not recall that. So that's fun information for me.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't try to hide my influences. I'm very okay with the fact that, like, I start from a building block and then move forward. But I have deliberately gone out of my way to remove certain things that would make me too close to Emma Frost. Like, I've made sure my character cannot telepathically read minds, for example, and stuff like that. There's just a thing that I was like, all right, this is a good building block. And then, you just go into the writing room and you just start moving from there. I created a story. I created a family dynamic that she was going to have with her parent. I think when I started writing, I was sort of the first to come up with the concept. So sort of nothing was defined. So I think it was because I came in with the concept that I had like a shitty relationship with my mom that then decided, okay, well then our dad should be the consistent parent between all three of us and stuff like that.
The organic nature of this process was really fun to watch unfurl, because it really did feel like every decision naturally led to the next one. So I think if you said diamond, and I think originally Dan said black dragon, he later changed to red, but it was like, okay, so if we have 2 of the 3 categories and we have 3 players, then, Laura, you can do whatever you want, but I feel like you being a metallic dragon really opens up some opportunities there for contrast. So I really liked how that all worked. Also, Emma Frost, despite her name, no ice powers? I've always found that very frustrating.
No, although I do believe her younger brother occasionally dates and fucks Iceman.
Okay.
So I think maybe that can be, you could put the Frost in there.
Is that why you keep fucking the person with the Larios powers? You're called to them?
I gotta keep rejuvenating my stories. No, I mean, it's actually amusing because at this point in the comics that I'm at, Emma Frost doesn't even have her diamond powers yet. That's like a power they give her later on. So as it is right now, she just reads minds. I think it's just meant to be a name that sounds catchy and like quick and memorable.
But once again, this element of kismet, because I think diamond dragons canonically have cold breath. That is like their draconic breath weapon. So at frost, diamond, it all just chef kiss. It feels like we came up with it arbitrarily instead of just finding the perfect match. But I will ask you now, my next question, sponsored by Copperhead, professional GM on startplaying.games, Spaghetti-O Moment, Jew-Man Jack, Sydney Marzing, and Polite Crow. Short message. So everyone has the level 20 sheets, your big young adult dragon, and you have your level 1 humanoid form. Why elf? Why are you a fashionable elf when you're walking around on your 2 little feet?
Oh man, well I can't get too much into certain levels of this because some of it is spoilers, but I wanted to as I started writing the character, I wanted her to have sort of a conflict with her mother. And I think I just, I went in with the knowledge that my character's horde was going to be like beautiful things. And, when you go into that, I don't know how much we're supposed to like base our hordes off of like what our parents kind of had a horde of. I don't think you need to, sort of, I guess, like the real life equivalent of whether or not you're going to join the family business or not. But I wanted there to be some kind of link. I can't recall if this is considered public information yet, but this is not really a spoiler to say that DiCaprio's mother collects perfect things. So I wanted there to be sort of this element of beauty v perfection in their relationship. And because of that, I wanted DiCaprio to have some form that she goes to that does look not perfect, but very damn near close to perfect. Like when she is in her humanoid small folk form, she is meant to see like that. And I really just kind of looked for like, well, what's like a pretentious race that we can do? And have we had heroic elves on Dice Book? I feel like every time they show up, they're bigots.
When I play them as NPCs, they're usually bad, but we've had a couple of, I think, a half elves, especially as player characters over the season. I think, especially in like the mid years, a lot of people did it because fifth edition gave them a lot of bonuses. But yeah, that's another thing. We've never gotten too deep into elf culture because we never really just sat with elves long enough to explore them. But I do like, yeah, it's going to be a connection with your mother, Desdemona, who the audience will meet in a couple of episodes. Her existence and demeanor are not a spoiler. And that's another thing that unfurled very naturally, where you're like, I want to have a contentious relationship with my mother. And Dan was like, well, I want my mother to be nice to me. And then Laura was like, I'll be normal. We just have the whole range. So I really like that a lot. In fact, next question sponsored by Kaniku fan. Miles and Danny love Dice Funk Forever. Extellaris, Concept, The Dawn of Dungeons, and Lime. What's Lime? Exclamation point.
Lime.
Lime! Did you have any particular inspirations for your mother character, Desdemona the Diamond Dragon?
So, yes.
And you just start crying.
Yeah, I'm like, my real mom treated me like this now. I did. I think I went through a lot of like different variations. I have played Dice Funk for a while now. So this is not the first time I've had a character with a parental influence who is negative in their life. And I have kind of dealt with that in different ways. I wanted this to be slightly different in that I think I eventually told you, I was like, the thing I'm kind of envisioning in their relationship is I want the mom to have kind of a Lucille Bluth energy from Arrested Development.
I'm picturing a huge fucking dragon with Lucille Bluth's face every time I say her name.
Because I think that's just very fun in that there is like legit trauma going on there, but I think there is going to be an air of like catty combativeness to it. This is not going to be sort of like the after school special picture or something like that. What I'm going for is like these two do not like each other, and it is represented in the fact that they go after each other. Like these are just two people who, when they see each other, immediately kind of start going after one another's insecurities. And I just think that's a funny way to have like a conflict in their relationship. It still leaves like, I have to think like, well, what does that inform about my character then? And I've been processing that as time's gone on. I've started to actually reconsider her relationship to her father in the context to just like, like, I guess this is what she grew up with. How would she view her father? Which I can kind of inform based on my real life, where my dad also was not a part of my life until I reached adulthood, basically. So there's definitely going to be some interesting things there. But even as I'm recording this, my character has still not run into my mom yet. I have not run into Desdemona, as we'll find out. And it's fun getting to play a character who is like terrified, like is like doing everything to try to avoid this meeting happening, but knowing full well, just from a narrative standpoint, they're gonna run into each other. Like it would be wild if we got to the season, Austin's like, hey, you never ran into her. Like that'd be crazy.
Yeah, we've recorded 10 episodes at this point, and there have been like 2 scenes where you were in the same area and avoided her specifically, which is, I think, an interesting, characterization of being like conflict avoidant, but also very haughty. There's a lot tied up in there, and I do like that as a comedic angle too, because it's not like Lucille Bluth is, doing mommy dearest stuff to people. Exactly. She's not like whipping people with wire coat hangers. It's like it's funny that she sucks. So we'll see how that develops. Next question, sponsored by C.A. Little. Christman renaming the Bussy Bandits to the Gat Gang. Oh my god, I can't believe the
Whoa!
things they make me say. Squishy Fishy, Marine Science Guy, and Brent, still every episode of Dice Funk. Goatly, thank you very much. You mentioned your father, Orlando, the black and orange dragon, the copper and black dragon. He's very important to this season. The audience will have just seen him on screen at the end of that first episode where he acts, I would say, like hot and cold. He's like clearly like playing the siblings against each other.
Hmm.
You know, being fickle with his attention and so forth. How are you thinking about him going into this, and how has that been working so far?
That's a very interesting question. So one thing I want to say is it wasn't explained to us like on the forefront, like the way your dad generally kind of raises you is he kind of gives you tests. That's something that we discovered all organically in the moment. And it is sort of ended up kind of informing, I think, the way DiCaprio then raises her two younger siblings in that it is kind of instilled in her in a way to also think she needs to test them in some way. But she also comes from the vantage point of, I hate being constantly given these stupid fucking tests and it makes me feel shitty. So like, there's like this attitude of like, I should really be trying to break this cycle, but it's just what I've learned at this point. And that started to kind of inform how I want DiCaprio to kind of treat her younger siblings, because she is the oldest. She is the one trying to give them some level of guidance. And, you know, maybe we could talk about that a little bit more later. But I think she's also kind of balancing that with the fact that, like, she doesn't have two super great, like, role models for how to, like, raise and nurture another person in any way. So she's kind of combative in that way. But I think it's really cool. Our dad, Orlando, is a character who, like, right now, we're so kind of early on in this season, but like truly right now, you could tell me like this character could die next episode and I'd be heartbroken, or he's the final boss. I truly like, I know I have no idea where this could go, but I think that's a very intriguing role. This is a very powerful character, and I think there's a lot of legacy and sort of weight to that our characters are kind of unfurling. Like, this is an ancient creature, and even though our characters are all level 20, we're adults. We have like defined ourselves as well. There are like sort of eons that Orlando has lived without us. And I think it's interesting to kind of see where and when we're going to be able to find connections with them as our characters start to maybe have more like open conversations with them throughout the season, or just start to really dig into it. I mean, the juiciness of this season is the fact that there is going to be a lot of family drama going on. So I'm already preparing some scene mentally in my mind where DiCaprio just kind of loses it on her dad. At some point, it's going to happen.
Yeah, he's a very stressful character to play, but I hope going to be very rewarding, because I think he
Yes.
does contain the capacity for very a lot of harm, but also is a fully fleshed out person with like emotions, and he wants to do right and stuff. So it's like I've given myself a kind of King Lear situation, which is kind of infamously one of the most difficult acting roles in all of Shakespeare. Is that he's the father of three siblings, and he does some pretty bad stuff and some pretty noble and sad stuff. So that unfortunately is the standard I've set for myself. We'll see if I can live up to it. But it's also hard finding the exact balance, because I think very easily you could be like, oh, fuck this guy, he sucks, like if he's a dick
Yeah.
one time. But I think anyone who's had a complicated relationship with their own parents knows that it's not that simple. Like, it's
Yes.
there's a lot going on there. They're all part of you, and they have influenced you in a million ways you don't even know. So I really the way that you three have been engaging with it, I've been very grateful because there's a chance that you all are just like, actually, this guy sucks. We're never going to speak to him again.
There could be a world where we're just like, dad sucks, and like our whole story is about breaking away from him. But it's much more interesting for us to be, I don't want to say the Nepo babies, because that's not really how this culture exactly works, but like there is a prominence that we have as the children of this very powerful figure. And as the story goes on, sort of the good and bad that kind of comes along with that. Having sort of this extra spotlight on us right now since we're the children of the most powerful dragon.
Yeah, I think we'll go to the next question, sponsored by A Werewolf Turns 30 this month.
Wow,
Hooray!
happy birthday.
Hooray! Question mark?
No,
Julius
30 is a wondrul age. You're so young. You have so much ahead of you. Absolutely cherish your 30s. They're going to be great.
uh, Julius funneling money to Florida. Thank you. The
Mhm.
space fighters want to know Austin's opinion on the Spirited movie. Spirited Away, or like was the Spirit the horse movie? What is Spirited? I don't know what that
Let's
is.
see. Spirited movie. Oh, this is the one with Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds. Some kind of a Christmas
Oh,
musical.
okay. I haven't seen it. I have seen a promotional image of the two of them soy facing though. So, address day Turing, and I gave Austin $10 to dunk on himself in the credits, and you should too, or pay 20 to defend him. I like this strategy. This is a long-term investment goal for me. But you mentioned the system you live under in the Cookie Mountains. So dragons have a gerontocracy, rule by the oldest. Your father, Orlando, is that ancient dragon who's in charge, which, as far as the campaign is concerned, means he has to enforce the Gladys Accords, a kind of law that was suggested in season 9 by Sarah, the player, Gladys, her character, that in order to stop dragons from eternally warring over territory and their hordes. You know, they famously have a rapacious greed. Instead, any super valuable artifacts have to be destroyed or shared. First of all, I gotta say, do you, Quinn, have any opinions on that law or that idea that you're bringing to your character, and how does DiCaprio feel about it?
It's interesting, yeah. It was a great sort of concept that Sarah added, and one of those ideas that can really only exist in kind of like this art form, and sort of maybe writing to a certain extent, but like in Dungeons and Dragons in particular, the way we're doing this, we're like regularly being like, hey, what if essentially we just try to rework the entire lore that's been written for this thing? Like, we've done it with Illithids, and like, what if Illithids were essentially nothing like what they are in the books anymore? We changed the entire way their culture works. And there's sort of this element here, but sort of the difference between the Illithids and dragons. But none of us were playing Illithids really the next season. I know Wendy had like part Illithid sort of take over there, but like there was certainly a level of we were like dealing with the Illithids who have made that decision. Now we are the dragons who have to decide, like, is this what we are going to do? Like, we very easily could become that fringe outside faction that, you know, is like deeply hateful of this thing, that takes away what we consider to be a principal part of our culture. And I think the way that I'm playing DiCaprio is that she keeps her personal opinions relatively close to her chest, because she tends not to think about it. She knows that she's not the one who gets a final say in a lot of things, really. You know, that's more or less her dad. But when they're on missions, she might have that opportunity to make the final call. And if that's the case, I think she's going to go with what's the best thing for her and her family to do. And I don't really honestly know what that means yet. I think DiCaprio's still trying to figure that out herself. There's like a danger in dragons in that all of them are very powerful, and they're all kind of close together right now, which is like an interesting thing. I don't know if we're ever gonna, like, you know, describe this as like a Westeros thing of like, you know, you can get to King's Landing in a day or whatever, but it is like I think a tangible fear that a dragon should have, or maybe a dragon wouldn't have, in like a bold kind of sense, that like any day someone could just fly by and like pop your shit off, you know. DiCaprio, I think, feels a safety because she's like, well, if you do that, then my dad is going to obliterate you off the face of the planet. But, you know, dad's getting old potentially. So, you know, I think she is really going to be weighing those circumstances a lot. And I think at the end of the day, she appreciates that the Gladys Accords do try to make a peace, but I think she might be willing to break them if it means protecting the people she cares about, which, yeah, I mean, that's a flaw of her character, I think, probably, but I'm interested to explore if that actually comes to pass.
I'm happy to hear your thought process because that is, of course, the real problem with these international non-proliferation treaties and weapons inspecting regimes is that, yes, it's a nice idea in theory, but the people who enforce them do so selectively. Actually, it's fine if our allies have nukes. It's just our enemies who can't have it. Who decides who's our enemies? Things of this nature. You know, it doesn't have to be a one-to-one allegory, but the applicability is very clear. And I like that we've added like lore bits to make it juicier. Like you said, that dragons are usually extremely territorial and rare, and having them all bunched up together here it's a very unique situation that the characters themselves are like kind of grappling with and have feelings about. It's like, oh, it's nice to have a community, but also I do want to rip off three people's heads because I'm an extremely badass motherfucking death machine, and I don't like to be even slightly annoyed. So, and also other lore bits from previous seasons, like the fact there is a cult of resurrection out there. So even if someone does die, it might not be permanent, which is something that in setting we know, out of character we know, but I don't know if it'll be important. That's not even being no cap, you know.
I do use that to inform DiCaprio to a certain degree because, yeah, this is a world where resurrection exists, which means that, like, to kill someone, you can't just kill them. You have to kind of, like, obliterate them and everyone they know. Because there's always the idea that, like, as long as somebody knows they're dead and just picks up the bot like a bone and heads over, you know, they could bring them back. So there is, like, a level that's, like, getting revenge on someone is almost like assaulting the earth kind of, like, move. You really have to, like, you either have to, like, trap them under, like, to a place where they'll never get out, or just, like, erase them and everyone they've ever known from the planet.
Yeah, we had a lot of conversations about this in season 11 about the idea of perverse incentives, is what it's called in law. But like, you think you're making rules that protect everyone, but someone can figure out a loophole that makes it really fucked up. So yeah, a murder just can't be a murder now. You have to vaporize anyone who could in any way recover the body. So
Yeah.
it's really troubling and might have implications. But at this point, it's not clear to me.
And dragons are powerful. So, like, these are the people who, if you do piss them off, they're the ones who are going to be like, all right, fine. You know, time is no matter to me. I will see you and everyone you know systematically obliterated into dust. I don't like, good luck.
Yeah, I mean, that leads me neatly to my next question. Eric Ogren completely missed the Patreon tier update. Oh, that's important. Make sure you check that out because in addition to getting on this list, you can also have a character in a future season of Dice Funk, an NPC crafted by you. I've had two people take me up on that offer. I'm very excited about both characters. So check that stuff out. Even just a single $1 will get you access to all of our...
I'm going to... Austin, what if I like loudly proclaim I will date one of these created NPCs?
That's between you and them. I don't want to stand in the way of true love. I was going to say just $1 though can get you access to our bonus show, whereas all of the Sebastian Stan jokes you crave. Next up, Grapes of Wrath are overrated. I'll take the kumquats of compersion. That's fun. Chase Sterling. Tara is giving money to say hi to all the cats. I will let her know. And Egon. My next question was, how has it been playing with the morality of dragons? So pretty much every season of the show, no matter whether people are playing goblins, elves, orcs, humans, whatever, mostly people play them basically like nice people, like nice humans, you know, Jeff from down the street. This is the season I think people are really leaning into. I am an implacable death lizard. Fuck you. But not necessarily villainous, just like different. How has that been?
Yeah, great question. I think an element of it is that, yeah, you have to access something and a kind of cruelty your character can reach that you have to just address as, like, I don't know if it's necessarily their evil per se. I have like a confusion even defining what my character's alignment is early on, because I'm like, I think she's a good person, but like, I mean, she's a dragon, so like, if you cross her, she'll eliminate you and your entire bloodline from existence. Like, I don't know, dog.
It's like there are good people in the world out there who also swat mosquitoes, and it doesn't really change how anyone feels about them.
Exactly. There's this level that DiCaprio does things or will do things or has potential to do things that I think an audience member might look at in another season. They'd be like, oh, this is like a heel turn for the character. And like the truth is just like, I think DiCaprio is actually one of the more open-minded dragons. Like, she does seem to view her small folk as people. She just doesn't care about them personally, and I think that can lead to like her own way of dealing with small folk and how she kind of is not going to go out of their way to obliterate them, but she does also kind of view them as just sort of an accessory to a dragon. They're sort of like when you give the dragon's biography, it's like domain, mountain, horde, gold, small folk, humans, and that's really all they are. And I think that challenge the dragons can give to the small folk that we, the humans in real life, relate to is kind of where things get kind of funky and interesting. I'm not sure what level though DiCaprio can go to. I've had to ask this myself. We are going to be playing with some very dangerous artifacts because this will come up during the show. But when you say artifacts, you are referring to capital A artifacts, as in legendary items in the D&D universe that are like extremely powerful.
Yeah. And the famous item Sphere of Annihilation destroys anything it touches except for capital A artifacts. They are like a unique non-Euclidean item. I in the show say think of the One Ring from the Lord of the Rings.
So we're going to potentially be discovering things like that, and I honestly I could not tell you right now whether my character would do the morally correct thing with all of these, and I don't think I should be thinking that way. I think she is kind of looking at herself as being above others, and she really only looks at it in a way as like, is this dangerous to give to other dragons? We might potentially find something that's like, oh, well, this enriches and betters the lives of every small folk person in existence. And DiCaprio would be like, but does that make them dangerous in any way? We should probably get rid of it.
You've used the vocabulary term small folk a couple times, so I'm going to segue to my next question here, sponsored by Philip Mitchell. Elfrona, aka Alex Jones, aka the Thieving Squirrel, aka Mickle Wayne, Spirit of Gender, Shrug, they greater than she greater than he, 666 Neopets 666, and I up my donation so Austin can have a family, and you should too. I told a story on episode 10 about trying to sell my blood. If you want to know how Austin is at this point, that arena. But small folk is the term we're using for basically the humanoids who end up congregating around dragons. So in a normal D&D campaign, you go to a dragon's lair, there's like a mess of goblins there, right? There could be, orcs, there could be some kind of cult of Tiamat who has set up shop. That's a very common trope, is that dragons are basically a living ecosystem who create these like economies of treasure and carnage and so forth. So most of the dragons we're going to meet this season have a community of small folk. What was your approach to this prompt basically I gave you? So DiCaprio have small folk? How are you thinking of it?
Yeah, so this is not a thing I thought about originally when I conceptualized this character, because I'm not as like versed in all the D&D lore specifics as I think you and Daniel are. And when you mentioned like who you like, everyone needs to have like a small folk that like worship and work with them. I think by that point it was already determined that Laura's character would have a great relationship with her small folk, and Dan would have kind of a difficult relationship with his. And from that, just in that same way you talked about, like, all right, well, let's create differences. If Rex really doesn't like them and Hop really does like them, then what does DiCaprio do? And the answer was like, well, I think she likes them. She just doesn't treat them particularly. Like, she treats them well, but she is an emotionally distant leader. Like, she makes them look good because that in turn makes her look good. And that is kind of the way she will live her life, in that she will view her small folk as pawns. She treats them great, kind of, I guess, in a way, imagine living like the life, that an animal that's going to be slaughtered one day should have, maybe, like, where it's just like, you treat them as well as you possibly can. But one day I might need you to go to war for me. I don't know we'll figure that out when it comes to it. But, in the meantime,
I'm glad you brought that up because I think Laura specifically says that she loves her small folk, but they just don't live very long. And it reminded me of my girlfriend's sister who raises chickens, and she names all of her chickens. And it's like a constant carousel of heartbreak. And it's like, listen, I love animals too. But you got to protect your heart at a certain point, which is what I think DiCaprio does, where she treats, her small folk fine enough. It's like almost like having assistants, having an executive secretary or whatever. She's not a dick, but you just can't be constantly mourning all these people.
But in that same way, I deliberately gave her a small folk that she does make a connection to within her empire, her, whatever. And that is going to be the lens to which we see whether or not her opinions on her own small folk might change. Maybe she gets more humanity and starts to treat them more like Hop does. Or maybe she, kind of cements herself in the way she feels. And she's just like, nope, this will always be a professional thing only. You all serve me and then I take care of you and give you great wealth and everything like that. But you have to go out and, pay your sacred treasures to me or whatever. I don't know where we're necessarily going to go, but there's a lot of room there to explore. And it's just one of those things that I'm really excited to see how that dynamic might change over the course of a season. And plus, it's just always fun to create separates and like differences between our characters. Like the way that we all treat our small folk is a thing our characters, like the siblings, can immediately talk about. Like we don't need like any build up to it. Just like Hop loves hers, Rex doesn't love his. DiCaprio has a weird relation. Like that's how DiCaprio can communicate with their siblings. Hop, you like these guys too much. Rex, what are you doing? Your small folk are so shambly. It looks poorly upon you.
Yeah, I think on your first sheet you sent over, you had a kind of representative small folk, kind of like the Alfred to your Batman, and then you kind of changed your mind on, I think, the name and species of that. Did you have any particular thoughts about that process, or are you still just kind of prototyping, working through? What kind of goals were you thinking about there?
Yeah, I think, a lot of that was first draft a little bit. But part of it is the version of Emma Frost that I read that I really enjoyed and wanted to base this character off is the Krakoan Age character of Emma Frost, who very specifically has a personal stylist called Jumbo Carnation, who is this like very flamboyant character who makes all of Emma Frost's beautiful outfits and also dresses all the other characters for the Hellfire Gala. Those two characters, like Emma Frost is a very different character where I'm at reading the comics now and stuff like that. So, this was just based off that. But I was like, I want her to have someone she can talk to. I really feel like I have to choose my language carefully here. Because I don't think she views Lace as a friend.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a confidant. It is someone she can openly talk to. Because I also oftentimes think of like the loneliness of dragons. These are generally solitary creatures. And now suddenly there are a lot of life events occurring around them at once because of our close proximity. And then just obviously we're doing a lot of family drama this season. Characters need to have someone they can vent their frustrations to. So I've been trying to pick the NPCs in my life, my character's life, that she does give some level of honesty to. So that's been like a very specific thing. We will meet NPCs that have a past with my character who I'm kind of looking at and I say, she doesn't tell them shit about her family. Like or if she does, it's a real distant kind of thing. Whereas this NPC, I think she lets herself be a lot more vulnerable about her insecurities around them. And one of them is not a peer. One of them is not another dragon. I think there is a level of like, I don't even know. I wonder if it's the equivalent of her like feeling like she's talking to like a pet or something like that. I don't like, it feels mean because this is like a tangible person with like needs and wants and an ability to communicate. But yeah, I'm still trying to like kind of figure that out in her mind. I think she's even trying to like understand how she feels about the fact that she feels safe enough to talk about her life to this person. Also, I just think it's fun. Like once I started to realize when you talked about small folk, I was like, yeah, I guess you do sort of see like, kobolds around dragons and stuff like that a lot of the times. That usually those dragons or usually those kobolds, they like know the disposition of the dragon in some way. And I was like, I feel like I need to do things to like make it so DiCaprio has a little bit of like a what do I want to say? Like sort of a vibe that her small folk refer to her in, where they're just like, oh, watch out. DiCaprio's having another wild one. She just blew up another mountain or something like that. Must be a rough day. Like one of those things. Like I want to place those things in there so that there could be like almost a discussion of her without her in some way amongst her small folk. And I don't know. It's one of the elements I'm most looking forward to seeing change over the course of a season.
That's a really smart way to think about characterization, is that they should assert pressure even when they're not physically present, because they're well drawn enough that other people can think of them that way. I like that a lot. I will say the fine line between small folk and like pet has come up a couple times. Orlando, in the first episode, you'll see that his horde is endangered animals, which are animals, of course, but also they are kind of his small folk. He blurs the line in a way that's kind of unusual, and I'm curious if that's going to go anywhere. I don't actually know at this point. That's something I kind of find when I open my mouth and words come out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of stuff. It's mostly on like one of the pains in doing this show is that you want to explore everything, but at some point you're like, oh, fuck, like we can't do this. There needs to be a plot this episode. So I don't know. Maybe we'll do like a donation drive to just fund an episode where nothing happens. We just talk to each other for an entire episode.
I've actually, I think, done a very minimalist job here with the dragons. Like, you'd be surprised how few characters are going to ultimately show up, because so many of the important figures are just like your family members. Like, I hope it feels like there's a lot of people to talk to.
Yes.
But yes, I've been doing this show long enough to know that what is a small social gathering in real life is an overwhelming nightmare to keep track of in an audio only format. So yeah, it's I think a under like appreciated element of like the actual play podcasting is like keeping a tight cast that's like focused and everyone can get some time to shine.
What I really enjoy about what you've done this season, I didn't even think about it going into it. Maybe that's on me. But I love that there is an interest in all of our characters and the relationships we have with our stepmoms. Because I never really considered that going into the season. I was like, okay, so my character doesn't like her mom, so that's kind of a thing. And then she has a deep respect for her dad, and that's going to be the thing. I never even considered how she feels about the other mothers until you directly said, you're like, well, one likes you and one doesn't. And now I'm suddenly like considering that. And I can imagine myself having conversations with the two other mothers. And I think like there's also that level that, Dan and Laura might also have, like, I wonder how our characters feel about DiCaprio's mom. Like, that's just the thing that, like, we are now all considering this because, yeah, we're probably going to interact. It's very strange because I have a very brief relationship with my stepmom, and it's not a particularly deep well to dig into. So I'm really finding myself fascinated in this world where, like, there's, like, pretty intriguing relationships that could be defined there.
I don't have anything like written down where it's like, like a spider web of I've seen this in like fandom spaces where there'll be like pictures of all the characters and then arrows pointing to them, which says like likes, loves, hates. But it just feels like these things naturally arise where it's like Rex's mother is Orlando's current partner, so she feels like her son should be entitled to a place of prominence, but you're the oldest sibling, so she kind of resents you. It's just like, bam, that just fell out of my brain without any real like thought process. It just felt very natural. So so much to dig into. I know we're going to end the season and be like, I think we could have done 30 more episodes.
Oh yeah, easily. Because like I there's so much to want like to explore in this. Like I want to talk to a bunch of characters, but I also know that it's like, all right, I'm not the only character in this party. I need to make sure the other characters have space to develop themselves. So it's very funny. I think we've had conversations sort of separate from one another, talking about things we've wanted to do this season. And then an element of that gets brought up in the season, and another player like realizes they're like, oh, actually, I really want to do this thing. And in that moment, you just kind of like step aside to a little bit and you're like, all right, well, let's see what happens. We're kind of competitive siblings with one another. So like, are we going to compete over this plot element? Are we going to, acquiesce to let like, all right, let me let my little brother have a win, or maybe DiCaprio needs to get this one or something like that. There's like a certain element of like being competitive, but also trying to like, take care of your siblings. I think we all are of the idea that our characters love one another. So I don't know. There's something very curious there as we start to see this season kind of expand with where these storylines are going.
It's been such a vindication because in previous seasons, I've always wanted to let everyone do whatever they want, have maximum hands off, be like, yeah, sure, you can be any species, any class, any background, it's all good. But I think the dividends for me being like, nope, you're all dragon siblings. Here's how it works. Here's the culture. Do what I want. It made me feel like a tyrant, but I think everyone's active enthusiasm, electric passion has been very vindicating.
I mean, you know me. I live to explore the relationship of siblings. That's like my favorite relationship I think humans can have, and I'm just very satisfied getting to explore it because I get to dig into a lot of stuff. I get to like. It's very interesting. I am playing the eldest sibling, despite the fact that I am the youngest sibling in my family. So there's a lot there that we could even talk about. But then, in addition, it's just sort of like, I also know what it's like. I have two younger half siblings. So I'm like, I know what it's like to have siblings younger than me, and like how you kind of view, you're like, ugh, dad really coddled them or something like that. Like I almost want to like elbow, Laura's character at some point, just be like, he's babying Hop. He's babying Rex. This is crazy. Our dad would have let us know. He would have dropped us from a mountain if we had done that.
Yeah, I mean, all four people on the podcast are sibling havers, and we have, swapped some stories and stuff. You're going to hear the hot goss this season. But it's been really good. Even in that first episode that the audience has heard, I just said, like, oh, we're going to cold open with some combat so you can all show off your abilities. And I didn't really give you even a reason why you're there. I mean, everyone will have heard that fight with the Storm Giants. And what we all kind of improv there was that Rex was like, I'm going to go kick some ass. And you two were like, let us come with you. It reminded me of that scene from the Ben Affleck movie, The Town, where Ben Affleck comes into the room with Jeremy Renner, and he says, I'm going to hurt some people and you can never ask anything about it. And then Jeremy Renner just says, whose car are we going to take?
Yeah.
It's just like ride or die. Like, hell yeah, I'm down. Let's go fuck shit up. It's so good. But to move on to one of our final questions here, I think final question, Tsukagi's husband, a good Brent, blue sky bitch for Let's Talk About Snacks podcast, midlife stasis, conduit of inevitability, Bleaker, and Matt Lackitz doesn't have the mental energy to update their Patreon name anymore, but still listens to every episode avidly. Oh, actually, I missed some. Hold on, I have to go back. Dr. Goatman and Francois Villa, deleted scene and everything everywhere all at once. I promise I can read. You've talked about DiCaprio's compulsion to hoard objects of beauty with specifically fashion and like accessories. Did you have a lot of knowledge about that coming in? Was this something you've been like bursting at the seams to talk about, or have you had to do a bunch of research?
I've had to do research. I'm not a particularly fashionable person. Obviously, that is something I am trying to explore more in my life, and I'm trying to get a grasp on. I spent sort of the past like year or so before this season came up, kind of capturing dresses that I would see at runways that I would be like, oh, this looks nice. I want to, I think I have like a folder in my phone that's just called like season 12 inspiration. And throughout the season at various different points, I'm just going to be dropping pictures into the chat. I'm going to have all these photos saved, and I'll probably just dump them into some point in our Discord, I guess, at the end of the season or maybe at the start of it. I don't know. But the idea just being that I wanted to kind of explore it, to learn a little more. But I think the area that I do know behind it is the idea that like beauty can be a very like difficult to divine thing. It's a very subjective thing, you know? So I wanted to go in with the idea that there is like a stereotypical beautiful, the things that shine, that are very like well polished, that don't have a lot of like issues and things like that. But as we'll start to explore with DiCaprio as the season goes on, she has a very contentious relationship to the idea that things need to be perfect to be beautiful, and that flaws are oftentimes very necessary in beauty. And I think that's something I really wanted to kind of explore with her. I don't know how we're going to kind of get there necessarily, but it's something I want to try to explore a bit with her character, that I don't think she necessarily exclusively views beauty as just like, this diamond, how beautiful. I think there is a time where she could pull out, it's on her character sheet, so you can read it at this point. She has hollow disc cards. I think she also thinks those are beautiful, the illustrations on it and stuff like that. I think she has maybe a more expansive view of what is considered beautiful, but she does want to hoard and collect it all.
Yeah, I think it's kind of the thing where all three of you are going to start with pretty basic hoard items, like the first things you think of when you think of beauty, authority, and junk. But then as the season goes on, we can expand, add nuance, riff. This is kind of like what you did in season 11 with the idea of like the vibe check, where then you're like, what if a vibe check was like this, or what if it was like this? And it's like, oh, I didn't even think of that. So that's what I'm hoping to bring to the table.
I also love that, items are not defined by one thing, and there are going to probably be items that are going to be considered beautiful and also maybe junk, or that are junky and maybe also kingly or something like that, and the fights that we could potentially have over that.
Yeah, I was easing into that, but you might be referring to the last episode where I did strongly hint that was the case or something. But it's gonna be fun space to play in. I did unfortunately lie to you, and there is one more question because I missed some names. Dust in Dark Water, a gambling pig has no regrets except most of his 20s. Nephisticidia, the queer sheep, poor, jobless, living in a van but finally free of state service. Aaron Norgard, and Graffiti. That's all the names. I'm sorry I'm bad at reading. It's just because of my personality and predilections, and I am never going to change or get better. Last question. Why Wizard? So you could have been anything. What was it about Wizard that made you think it was the best representation of being a super badass dragon?
I just wanted to play, like, again, I'm trying to think of this character in, like, an Emma Frost way. And I'm like, Emma Frost, even though she does turn to diamond, she is not considered, like, a hand-to-hand fighter. She is not the one who gets into the thick of things. So I was like, okay.
Oh, she's going to be a Vanguard in Marvel Rivals next season, so
yeah,
go off.
Maybe that is how it goes. At least in the portions I've read, she's generally acted from afar. I think it was mostly a case of just kind of looking at someone was going to have to be level 20 dragon, like a level 20 magic caster, because that's like when you told us we were going to be doing a lot of level 20 fights, it's like, okay, so we need a wizard, right? Like we need someone who's going to have access to a lot of spells, and like if shit gets bad, like we need someone with dispel magic, and we need someone with counter spell, and we need somebody with, fucking meteor storm in case shit gets really bad. Like that's the kind of thing, I think if we're not going to get to play with a lot of level 20 sheets in Dice Funk's history. I don't know if we'll ever play with another level 20 character again in Dice Funk, honestly, after this season. So it was making sure that we were going to kind of utilize those high level spells. And then once I kind of use it, trying to be more open-minded than to next time being like, all right, maybe, we did weird last time. Maybe we don't use weird in this fight. Let's pick another level 9 spell or another level 8 spell to use. Cause who knows if we'll ever get to see Prismatic Wall cast again in Dice Funk. I have no idea.
I'm glad you said that, because I didn't actually provide any guidance there. I didn't try to put my thumb on the scales, but that is kind of what I wanted. Because, I have a document with my season ideas for the next, 10 seasons, which is, roughly 8 or 9 years. And no, none of them are level 20. So you might never get a chance to use the weird stuff. And I have appreciated how the two spellcasters, you and Laura, have gotten pretty fun with the spells. Dan is just happier than a pig in shit doing redonkulous damage with his custom class, so it's not as complex or whatever. I guess maybe actually the math is pretty complex, but
I was gonna say his character, I read off a spell and I'm like, okay, you need to make me intelligence saving throw. That's kind of what I have to do. And Dan, it's like, all right, I made this attack, I have to roll here. I got to get to this one because I get an additional one. You need to make me a strength saving throw or you're prone, and then 400 damage or something like that. And I'm grateful because someone needs to play that because playing a wizard in 20th level is it's essentially like playing two people with revolvers pointed at each other's head. And like if they hit me with their big spell first, I'm done. I have 10 AC at level 10, level 20. Like I'm a wizard. We don't get stuff, So there's like a real fragility that our characters have. And I just need to say, like, I am eternally grateful to have a character like Rex, who if I go down, I know I'm like, well, this dude has like 400 health. He can chunk this down. I do not. My constitution score is particularly base for a dragon.
I was worried about the combat this season because we have never done anything like this, but I think it's been really good. The level 1 fights are very tense because they're all made of tissue paper. Your bones are made of glass, so that's exciting. And then in 20, you're doing outrageous stuff. So like in that first episode, people just heard, you're making the storm giants stab each other to death. You're crushing them with ice. You're doing, all this badass stuff. But also there is real challenge. I will say the last big boss fight, like the last climactic boss fight we had on the recordings that haven't been released yet, I was really worried. Is this going to be tough enough? And it was. It was pretty tough.
Yeah, well, that's like a lot of the fun that also comes about in the kind of characters we have this season, in that there are frequently opportunities where our characters will like split away from each other. I think we have a very like well-defined group of characters this season. They all kind of have our own very specific kind of wants and needs or interests. So it's not impossible for our characters to walk into a room together and be like, all right, guys, we're all focused on the same mission. But then, I don't know, maybe Dan sees someone he started a fight with back in high school he wants to finish, and I see one of my exes at the corner, and Laura sees like an unguarded spring that she wants to investigate. So like, we'll all go in different ways. Boss fights still might happen though, and that's the thing, is we're not all now next to each other, and that's when the true terror begins.
I do like, how fleshed out everyone is and how I have you all are pursuing different, sometimes conflicting goals, but you're still on the same team and you all love each other, which is ideal, because sometimes if you conflict too much, it's like, why are you even a party? This is illogical.
I have made it a very specific point that DiCaprio cares more about her siblings than she does anyone else in this universe. So I will never betray the party in that way unless they eventually are like, we have to stop you, DiCaprio, and it's like a tragic boss fight or something like that. I can't control that, obviously.
DiCaprio, your swag too different. DiCaprio, they'll kill you.
But I really enjoy Rex and Hop so much, and I think it helps me play DiCaprio to know that she does see so much in her siblings, both good and bad about them, and the kind of complexity that adds texture in their lives then kind of adds it to DiCaprio, who is this stressed out older sibling who feels a responsibility to protect everyone, all of her siblings at this point. And it's fun. I am choosing to be the one, I think, that is going to be most engaging with sort of the Game of Thrones style world that is going to kind of exist a bit in the background here, and I'm super pumped for that.
I will say, was it the last post-mortem where we committed to toxic Yuri? You mentioned when you enter the room, you have to scan it for X's. I think that might have been a discussion we had on mic where you're like, we've never done a fucked up relationship.
I messaged you at some point, and I think I was just like, hey, next season, can I have kind of like a bad relationship, one that I don't think you as a listener would like. I don't want to make this sound like you're going to have to listen to something unpleasant. I think you're just going to have to listen to something where if I roll really well on a result, you're like, oh, and now they're going to be happy together. I don't think you would want these two to necessarily end up together. And it's this interesting thing because there's different ways we've gone into that. And I have some where I kind of envision DiCaprio as being way more toxic than she is in another relationship, and why she might be like that in one versus the other, and like how does that inform her character. There's a lot I want to explore and kind of get into. I want to make sure that I want to be very clear. We're not trying to like put forward an abusive relationship or something like that. She's just a shitty girlfriend, I think, in many ways. She's just kind of a bad person, just because at the end of the day, you're actually not the number one person in her life when she's dating you. It's still kind of herself, and then by extension, her family, and then maybe you. And how does that go for other people to know that they're not at the top of this person's list?
I think the confidence of being a dragon has really shifted the balance in this direction, because previously, whenever there was kind of romance in the show, the players are generally nice people, the NPCs are generally reasonable, so they have a problem, they work it out, it's fine, everyone is like rational and nice. But if you're like fucking big dog, if you're like that girl, like you're not gonna maybe be the most healthy in your interpersonal relationship. So I'm excited. It's kind of a new flavor for us.
Yeah, if someone asks my character for a favor, suddenly now there are like large political implications from it. Whereas before we'd be like, hey, can I borrow your car to go pick up something? Like, absolutely, dear. Now it's like, can I pick up your car? Like, why? For what reason? Who brought you to my doorstep?
So we're going to have to circle back to this eventually, especially because there's only 3 player characters this season. So Crew Gunk is going to, I think, wrap back around. We'll be doing updates. So we'll talk more about, how your lair is coming along. Right at this point, the audience doesn't even know about DiCaprio's lair, and we haven't built it up very much, but we'll have an update there about your family stuff, your ex's stuff, all of that. I think is going to be fun to talk about in, 6 months or whatever.
Yes, absolutely. There are a lot of very cool things coming up. I just want to say I'm super excited about this season. This has been a really rewarding season as a player. There's been a lot of stuff to just really dig my teeth into. This is one of the more confident characters I've played, and I am enjoying that. It's always nice to kind of break out of the spin. Last season, I deliberately chose a character who was very simple to play because I was like, I'm also co-DMing, so I don't need to like make things too complicated for myself. But I added all that kind of complication into this character, and I'm very happy about that. I'm super excited for where this is gonna go.
Me too. I think we have successfully jerked ourselves off enough for an hour.
I hope it doesn't come across that way.
No.
I just hope it's an enjoyable character for the audience.
They like to watch. It's fine.
Whoa.
Thank you for joining us.
Okay. I think I need to get paid next time then.
It's going to be a different tier on the Patreon. But thank you, everyone, for listening. Patreon.com/Austin Yorsky to get on the list of supporters, to maybe make a character, to listen to our bonus shows, all that stuff. It helps us out.
Do you want my character to break up with your character next season? Let me know. It could happen.
Weekly manga recap is you. Anything else we want to plug on our way out?
No, I think that kind of covers it. Weekly manga recap is great. I'm trying to remember if there's a secret, also like a different website I also have for some reason, and I don't think I do. So I guess it's just weekly manga recap.
Just plugging Emma Frost as a concept.
Just plugging Emma Frost as a concept. Don't type Emma Frost plug though into Google. I don't think that's gonna come up with good results. Enjoy Marvel
it's now
Rivals.
The episode title, so.
Oh God, I think Marvel Rivals. If you're playing that, I hope you have a great time or whatever. I don't know. I enjoy it. Look up some dragons sometimes.
I think I'm just Austin Yorsky on there. You could find me. I'll heal you. I have a pretty mediocre Loki and a pretty good Magneto. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad. I heard Austin recently. God, I don't even know if this makes the episode, but I heard Austin recently talk about like balance patches for Marvel Rivals, and I thought I was listening to an alien. Like I was like, Austin Yorsky was talking about balance patches in a video game? What is this?
Yeah, I mean, Captain America was basically useless in season 0, and they gave him just a tiniest percentage more of health, and it's like a different character entirely. I don't know, I was very impressed by it. He's super good now.
Good for him. America's ass.
Reaching out to catch the soul.